Simon watched the rain beat against the grimy window of his tiny, second-floor office, the relentless drumming mirroring the ache in his chest. At 38, he was supposed to be thriving, the owner of a niche, independent music production company, Harmony Bridge. Instead, he was 1 month away from defaulting on his lease, his once vibrant dream reduced to a mountain of unpaid bills and a clientele list that had shrunk to zero. The truth was, Simon was creatively burned out, cynical, and deeply lonely. His passion, the thing that had once made him feel whole, now felt like a cruel joke, a source of his financial ruin and isolation. He hadn't produced anything truly meaningful in 2 years, and he'd come to believe that genuine, raw talent was a myth, drowned out by auto-tuned mediocrity and social media stunts. The buzzer on the wall panel shrieked, making him jump. He eyed the cheap, distorted camera feed, a man, small of stature, standing under the rusted awning, clutching a battered guitar case. The man was wearing a threadbare, white jumpsuit, a shockingly bad imitation of Elvis Presley's famous stage costume, complete with a cheap, plastic sequin belt. Simon sighed, running a hand over his tired face. Another delusional dreamer. He had no time for this. He almost hit the ignore button, but a sudden, desperate thought pricked him. What if this is the last person who will ever show up? He pressed the release. The man walked in, radiating a damp chill and an overwhelming, slightly sweet scent of cheap pomade. He set the guitar case down carefully, wiping his small, calloused hands on the sides of the jumpsuit. His name, he said, was Rafa, and he had traveled from the Philippines to America a year ago, working 3 grueling cleaning jobs to save up enough to find Simon's studio. He spoke with a gentle, melodic accent, his eyes dark, earnest, and full of a nervous hope, never leaving Simon's face. "Mr. Simon," Rafa began, his voice surprisingly soft. "I know what you see. I am not the king. But the king, he is in my heart. He is my language. When I sing his song, I feel like I am home again, even if I am so far away." Simon leaned back in his worn leather chair, crossing his arms. He saw a man who was utterly out of place, an object of potential ridicule. "Look, Rafa," Simon said, his voice flat, devoid of emotion. "I appreciate the hustle, but I'm a producer, not a novelty act. You've got the costume, but this isn't Vegas. My rates are high, and I'm about to close down anyway. What makes you think I could help you?" Rafa's shoulders slumped slightly, but the light in his eyes didn't dim. He unlatched the guitar case. Inside, nestled on red velvet, was not a vintage Gibson, but a simple, laminated acoustic guitar, its body scratched and worn smooth. "I do not need your money, sir," Rafa said simply. "I need your ear. Just one song. You do not have to record me. You just have to listen." He picked up the guitar and sat on the only other chair, a hard, wooden stool. Simon was about to tell him he had 5 minutes, but the man had already begun. He started not with the familiar guitar riff of an Elvis hit, but with a complex, gentle finger-picking pattern, something reminiscent of a Spanish ballad. Then, he opened his mouth. The first note was a revelation. It was deep, resonant, and impossibly pure, a sound that seemed to come not from his chest, but from the very floor of his soul. It was Elvis, yes, the unmistakable baritone and the perfect, delicate vibrato, but filtered through a lifetime of sun-drenched sorrow and a resilient, island spirit. He sang "Can't Help Falling in Love," but he changed the arrangement to a slow, melancholic kundiman-style, a traditional Filipino love song. As he sang, Simon felt a strange, physical sensation, a painful release behind his eyes. He realized he was not listening to a man in a silly costume, he was listening to the voice of pure, unadulterated human vulnerability. Rafa didn't mimic Elvis, he channeled the feeling of Elvis, the ache, the longing, the tragic beauty of his music. He sang as if his life depended on it, as if the notes were the only things connecting him to his distant family and his lost homeland. Halfway through the song, Rafa's voice broke on the line, "Wise men say only fools rush in." He didn't stop, but the tremor in his voice, the momentary crack, was more powerful than any perfect note. It was the sound of a man who had sacrificed everything, poured all his hope into this single, tiny, rain-streaked room. When the last chord faded, the silence was heavy, punctuated only by the distant traffic. Simon realized he was crying. Silent tears were tracing tracks through the dust on his cheeks. He hadn't cried in years, not since his own father had told him his music career was a frivolous waste of time. He looked at Rafa, the Filipino Elvis, and saw not a struggling immigrant or a novelty act, but a mirror reflecting the desolate state of his own heart. This music, this raw, honest vulnerability, was what he had been missing. It wasn't about production value, it was about the bridge between two human souls. Simon cleared his throat, his voice rough. "Rafa," he managed. That was the most real thing I've heard in 10 years. Rafa looked up, his face etched with confusion. "But my voice, it broke, sir. I apologize. I was thinking of my mother." No, that's exactly it," Simon said, suddenly invigorated, the cynicism momentarily shattered. He leaned forward. "That break? That was the truth. That's the song. We don't need the jumpsuit. We need that sound. We need the vulnerability of a man singing Elvis not in Memphis, but in Manila, bringing it with him to this tiny office in the rain. That is a story. That is a bridge." The next 4 weeks were a fever dream. Simon, fueled by a passion he thought he'd extinguished forever, worked day and night. He didn't try to polish Rafa's voice, he simply created a sparse, elegant production around it, using a cello and a single, haunting piano, letting Rafa's singular voice carry the weight of the song. He called in every favor, cashed in the last of his savings, and booked 1 hour in a high-end recording studio just to capture the pure, echo-laden sound of Rafa's guitar and voice. They filmed a simple music video, just Rafa, sitting alone on a stool, dressed not in his costume, but in a simple, pressed white shirt, his eyes brimming with the same earnest hope, singing the kundiman-style rendition of "Can't Help Falling in Love." Simon posted the video on a Tuesday afternoon, calling it simply, "The Filipino Elvis," the song he sings for his mother. He fell asleep that night in his chair, exhausted and terrified of the inevitable failure. He woke up the next morning to his phone ringing incessantly. He fumbled for it, a number he didn't recognize. He answered, his voice groggy. "Simon? Is this Simon from Harmony Bridge? I'm calling from a major label. We're all crying here. Who is this guy? Where did you find him?" The video has 3 million views in 8 hours, and every comment is a story about crying for their own loved ones. It's not just a song, Simon, it's a phenomenon of connection. Rafa's life changed in a heartbeat. Simon's life changed, too. He got his company back, not through a deal, but because Rafa insisted that Simon be his sole producer. But the real change wasn't the money or the fame, it was the restoration of faith. Simon didn't just find a viral sensation, he rediscovered his belief in the power of music and, more profoundly, the enduring beauty of human kindness and sincerity. Rafa, the man in the threadbare jumpsuit whom Simon had almost dismissed, had become the unlikely bridge not just for Simon's company, but for Simon's heart. He proved that the greatest talent isn't about perfection, but about the courage to be deeply and openly vulnerable. Today, Rafa still sings in his own, beautiful way, but sometimes, for a special encore, he will put on the old, repaired white jumpsuit. And when he sings, he always dedicates the first song to Simon, the man who finally chose to listen. The world is full of incredible, genuine stories of connection and transformation. Sometimes, all it takes is the courage to put aside our cynicism and truly listen. If this story touched your heart and reminded you to look a little closer at the people you might overlook, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us find and share the most powerful, beautiful acts of kindness happening around the world.